Live, and I think I just heard Simeon Fensterheim's voice through the drive, but I don't. It's not on my screen. Hold on, I have to see Simeon. It's at least his name. Okay.
Okay, Rob, no problem. I'm going to send you the check that I promised. It's okay.
Good
Take care.
Sorry, I'm moving my stuff. Wow. Okay. Good to hear your voice, Simeon, and I'm so glad you're learning along with us.
What volume are we in?
Since you were last year, we're actually almost done with the whole Orach Chaim. We're up to Hilchot Chanukah. No, I'm just kidding. We're on Reish Samech Aleph in Hilchot Shabbos. Reish Samech Aleph. The header being Hazman Hadlakas Haneros LeShabbos. That's the new packet. Yes. Yeah, and we're in the middle of Sif Aleph, is where we are picking up from. And so let's just reread the Shulchan Aruch for a moment now in terms of what we were doing last week. It'll hopefully remind us what we were learning, and let's then we'll pick up the comments of the Mishnah Berurah where we left off. So we'll start right from the beginning.
Rob, just the volume, please. What volume are you in?
Oh, it's Gimel.
Okay.
It's Gimel. Yeah, Hilchot Shabbos is contained. The entirety is on Gimel is entirely about Hilchot Shabbos. Okay. And when you open that one up, you turn to Reish Samech Aleph. Okay, and we'll be in the middle of Sif Aleph, and I'll call out the Sif Katans when we come across them in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, Safek Chashecha. I'm just going to reread the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch here. We did this last time. Safek Chashecha v'hu bein hashmashos. When it's doubt whether it's truly nightfall or not, which we call bein hashmashos, this period of twilight. V'hainu kedei shir hiluch shloshes rivei mil, which is the time that it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil. That's an ancient measure of distance. Probably is the word mil probably does relate to the word mile. I was trying to do some research on that. It's not the same distance, but the idea is the same, in that it's measuring a lengthier amount of distance. After the sun sets. I told you that, and we've already previewed a little bit, that the crux of the discussion about lighting candles is going to focus, when we get to that part, around how you define what is Shkia. Is there a two-part Shkia? Is there a beginning of a Shkia and an end of a Shkia, like Rabbeinu Tam thinks, that it's a period of time, or more like the Rambam, who thinks that it's a point in time? But whatever you hold, after the end of Shkia is the Bein Hashmashos period, this twilight period, which is the time that it takes to walk 3/4 of a mil. V'shir mil u'shlisho pachos chelek shloshim. A meal is 18 minutes. Okay. So during this time period of Bein Hashmashos, no matter how you define it, once you get to Bein Hashmashos, in Ma'aser Nesavada, you don't take Ma'aser, on something that certainly needs it. Meaning, I know that I have untithed food. I have tevel. If I have tevel, it's essentially as treif as a piece of pork. Okay, even though it's a vegetable, even though it's a grain, it's it's wheat. Nothing wrong with wheat, but I'm not allowed to eat it until it's properly tithed. I have not given the Kohen Truma Gedola, a Levi Maser Rishon. If I haven't done Maser Sheni or Maser Ani, depending on the year of the Shemitah cycle, then I'm not allowed to consume the food yet. Once I do it, so I can. So fixing it on Shabbos is like I'm using this word very carefully. It's like tikkun. It's like I'm fixing. Now to fix things on Shabbos. Your cabinet breaks on Shabbos. Screw comes out. You're not allowed to take the screw, pick it back up, take the screwdriver, and then refasten it into the cabinet. So that's why, because I'm allowed to fix on Shabbos. I'm allowed to fix something so that it's usable now, or it's usable, but that it's back to how it should be. It's a completed product. Similarly, I'm not allowed to complete the process here of fixing these grains. So on Bein Hashmashos, or even during Bein Hashmashos, I'm not allowed to do that. Okay, even though the whole Isser here is probably of fixing the grains is D'Rabbanan. I'm not actually fastening anything. So it's It's a lower level, but still an issue. But during Bein Hashmashos, I'm not allowed to do that. We did carve out one exception. Mishnah Berurah pointed out that if I have no other food for Shabbos, and the lack of, and if I am unable to tithe these foods right now, I won't have a Shabbos meal. Then, so then you could go ahead and do the maser process during Bein Hashmashos. I don't think there's a carve out here, though, if I'm not mistaken. During Shabbos, the idea is here it's already a derabanan during a time where it's already a suffix, whether it's a whether it's a problem. So we allow it. So that's one exception that was carved out. Back in the Shulchan Aruch, ve'ein matbilin es hakelim. You're not allowed to tovel, not to immerse your vessels. In its original context, the Mishnah Berurah points out, in the original context in the Mishnah in Shabbos, this phrase refers to when kalim became ritually impure, became tameh, and you would need to immerse them in a mikvah to purify them so that you could use them at your Shabbos meal. You wanted to serve it to your guests, you wanted to serve it to your own family, but this became tameh through some process this week. Somebody touched it who was tameh, whatever it was. Now I need to immerse it, immerse it in the mikvah. By the way, the Torah talks about this all the time when there are when there's a tameh person. Not all the time. In the Parshios, in the middle of Sefer Vayikra, it talks about this, that if a person touches it, so what do you have to do? All you have to do is take it to the mikvah, and then in the evening it's fixed again, or something like that. I don't remember the exact phrase. The exact phrase in the pasuk. So now this is not relevant to our context. All of us around the table, Kohanim included, are all tameh, because we have no way of being metaher. We have no way of purifying ourselves. It's impossible. We don't have the para aduma, we don't have the Beis Hamikdash to even process the para aduma, so it's not even relevant. The laws of Tumah and Tahara in that sense are not relevant. As a Kohen, you can't be Mosif Tumah in certain contexts, right, of Tumas Meis. You can't add on more Tumah. That's a special pasuk in the Torah, in Parshas Emor. But for every other purpose, there's really no issue with Tumas. So what is this talking about? It could be, you could also use it in the context of Tevilas Kalim, the mitzvah we have all the time when we have a dish that we purchase from a non-Jew. This is something that we have to do. So am I allowed to do that in the middle of Bein Hashmashos? The answer is no. I'm not allowed to take it. Why? Same issue, because it looks like I am fixing it because it's you're really not supposed to use it until it's been tovel. Okay. Gives nira kimitakin esakli. All right. Next category. Ve'ein madlikin es haneros. You're not allowed to light candles if you miss the time of sunset. Okay. If you miss the time of candle lighting, not uncommon in our household that we're lighting a few minutes after the time it's supposed to be lit. The candles. It's reality. Life's not so perfect. You can't light candles though after sunset. Even though it's twilight. Why? We saw this last time very clearly. Lighting a flame is not just a derabana. It's nirek imetaken. It looks like you're fixing. Lighting a candle, striking a match, is a doraisa, and we apply the very famous principle of suffix doraisa l'chorma. You're not sure if it's a doraisa, so don't do it. So therefore, you're not allowed to light candles, even though it's l'tzorech mitzvah. Right, so we talk about if you have to do tefillas kalim, and even there's an exception there, right? If I have nothing else to use on Shabbos and all the dishes, I can do tefillas kalim during Bein Hashmashos because it's for the purposes of Shabbos, and I have nothing other choice. Here, there's no fixing this. There's no even the tzorech mitzvah I can do it. No, you can't light candles in the period of Bein Hashmashos. And we talked about at the end of last week. We talked about what happens if I did do it by accident. So according to the opinion you'll find in the Shulchan Aruch, you're not allowed to benefit from the Issa D'Oraisa that you complete, that you do during this time period. So what do I do if I actually make a mistake? So we talked about practically the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah in Shin Yud Ches says that l'shas hadchak, in a moment when you need this, when it's you're up against it, so you can rely on the opinion of the Gra, who paskins like the most lenient opinion, which I think is Rabbi Meir's opinion in the Mishnah and Shabbos, that if you do something wrong, not on purpose, B'shogeg, you are in the context there was food. You can't eat the food. If it was b'shogeg, an accident that was done on Shabbos, b'shas chag. Everyone has to define what shas chag is for them. What is a time of sort of great need. But so it's possible that somebody I think here asked last week, well, what am I supposed to do? The candle's now lit. I can't blow it out, but should walk outside like live on and put my head under a rock. No, not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. And by the way, if there were other lights also in the room before this one was lit, so it's unclear that you're only benefiting from that light. We will get to that topic, by the way, about lights that were kindled on Shabbos. Can I use them, especially if a non-Jew puts on the lights? And they did it for my benefit. They thought that's what I really want, and they were trying to be nice. And so we will have a much lengthier discussion about that in due time. Okay, that's where we were up to last week. So that was a little review. So now let's continue in the Shulchan Aruch. Ve'ein me'arvin eruve tchumin. You're not allowed to make an eruv tchum during Bein Hashmashos. Ve'ayin lekaman simin taf tes vav siv beis. And he says, go ahead, take a look in the next volume of the Mishnah Berurah, where it talks about the laws of eruvin. So let's talk about this for a second here. Sif Katan Zayin in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, Sif Katan Zayin in the Mishnah Berurah. Ein ma'arvin eruve tchumin. Not allowed to make an eruv tchum during the twilight period. Deva Gemar, why not? Why not? Deva Gemara yesh semech le'eruve tchumin mikra. Because in the Gemara there is a hint to eruv. It talks about that there's a hint to of eruv tchum in the Torah. It's not discussed explicitly. Let's be clear. In the Torah, no pasuk talks about the mitzvah of eruv tchumin, but there's hints to it in the Torah. Anyone want to venture a guess? What's the hint in the Torah? Actually, I didn't look this point up. I might have a hunch here. I don't know. Tommy doesn't say it in yours. I have a hunch as to what it is. Or maybe Steve. I'm not using that addition today. The smach in the you have a second one? Oh, you have that one. Oh, okay. So let's see. The only thing they brought it up here either though. I was using this to prepare yesterday. Right. But they don't write it here. I can hold it up. Thank you. Okay, hold on, put it up. Okay. So my gut this has to do with the story of you're not allowed to leave the house on Shabbos, right? It says that you're supposed to stay in your place. I don't know if you can't literally go outside on Shabbos, but the idea is like you're supposed to stay in your makom on Shabbos, right? And not go out and whatnot, and that leads to the whole issue of carrying. And I don't know, I'm not sure if there's anything else in the Torah. I have to double check this one. But bottom line is that there is some hint to it in the Torah. The idea of tchum is a machlokas, whether it's doraisa or derabbanan. The institution of a boundary that you're not allowed to walk past on Shabbos, that may actually be a doraisa. So there is some element of the idea of a tchum being a doraisa, and so therefore, because there's some,
it's l'chumra.
So we're going to be machmir here, exactly. So va'alkein chomer da'afilu dvar mitzvah. So there, even though it's for dvar mitzvah, maybe you're doing eruv tchum because you want to extend where you can walk on Shabbos so that you can get to a mitzvah opportunity. You want to be able to attend the Shabbos, the bris on Shabbos morning. You're the Baal bris, you're the sandik, whatever. I don't know. I'm making the story up. Even for a dvar mitzvah, we're a little more stringent here because of the idea of tchum having some elements of a deoraisa, perhaps a hint to it. Kei kasav olah Shabbos. This is what the olah Shabbos says. Uva levush, and the levush, make el dvar mitzvah. He's more lenient. You have something for me, Richie? Right, that's the pasuk about
Jewish Tartov. I say each one come over here.
B'shalach. So B'shalach, you're not allowed. That's the story when there were some people who violated that and they went out to the fields to the man, which didn't fall, of course. And Kadosh Baruch Hu wasn't too happy that they explicitly disobeyed his words. His words were, don't, al yetzeh ish mimkomo. I don't know if that means you can't go out of your house, but you're not supposed to go outside of your place. This becomes the idea of tchum might have some, relevancy on a d'oraisa level. The idea of how much is the tchum on a d'oraisa is much greater than what we say the alpayim amos of a tchum, which is the rabbanon standard. So the idea, though, thank you, Richie, is sort of there is some hint to it in the Torah. That's why here we're a little more stringent according to the Ola Shabbat. But the Levush says, we're making it Dvar Mitzvah. It's from Dvar Mitzvah. There's a mitzvah purpose for the reason you're trying to make this Eruv Tchum, then we're lenient. Go ahead, make your Eruv Tchum, which is consistent with what we've seen. For every D'Rabbanan that we've seen here, that we've been a little more stringent, when there's a Dvar Mitzvah, we say, it's fine.
Is it about like putting the wires?
No, that's an Eruv. We'll get to that. We'll get to that today, actually. Also, that's an Eruv Chatzeros. Eruv Tchum typically would be done in two ways. One, you would take some food items, and if you can imagine, I'm just going to use a really, really bad example right now. You wanted to extend your boundaries of where you can walk, and there's a reason it's a bad example because it doesn't make any sense in halacha. But anyways, let's say you take some food items and you go to a property in White Plains, and you place it there before Shabbos on Friday. Because you want to be able to walk all the way to Ossining. I just made that up. And I don't know how much, I don't know how far the 2,000 amos from, probably not that far actually, from north of White Plains. Now you can go there because you've sort of established your makom. Go back to the pasuk. Your makom is also over there. And therefore, now you can walk in that direction a certain amount more than you would have been able to if you want to walk north. The reason what I said makes no sense is because you have to have a certain break between communities, physical distance, in order to say that here your city ends and now your 2,000 amos of walk where you can walk extend. The reality is that between here and White Plains, our communities are connected. Probably in the days of yore that you got to start thinking about more like places where I come from in Ohio, where not Columbus, but you go a few minutes out of the city, and then you have this community over here. You have Pickerington, you have Zanesville, and there's nothing connecting them except for the highway and between exits. So there you might actually have enough distance literally between the edges of the communities, so that you can now start to say, well, this city is halachically, this is the border, and now we can count our 2,000 amos. Bigger cities like where we live or more populated areas, you have much more room to extend. The one area, we'll get to this when we get to volume 4 in about 6 years. We'll talk about it there, where Manhattan may be an exception, where because of the size of the Hudson River, if you wanted to walk across the bridge, that may not be so easy and not be halachically acceptable to walk all the way across the bridge, like to the New Jersey side. So depends how you draw the map of your tchum. So that's a very complicated topic because the tchum can be in a box shape, not whatever. We'll get there. So bottom line is my example didn't make sense, but hopefully that makes some of that. That's Eruv Tchum. Eruv Chatzeros is an Eruv around the community that allows us to carry. Okay.
Excuse me, Rav, when the Levush is makil, is he makil only when there's a chishash, whether or not it's really midoraisa or not, or in any case?
I think that he's saying, look, the whole halacha is derabbanan here. That you can't make an Eruv Tchumin during this period is that you can't make an Eruv Tchum is a derabbanan. All the laws of how you establish an Eruv Tchum are derabbanan. So to make it is a derabbanan. So he says, look, the reality is, yes, I know my friend the Ola, they weren't contemporaries, but the Ola Shabbos wants to be a D'Oraisa. Say it's not a D'Oraisa, I think it's a hint towards Machmir. Because it's a hint towards a D'Oraisa. He's saying, look, the reality is, if you have a Dvar Mitzvah, you have a good reason to have to make an Eruv Tchum during Bein HaShmashos, so make it. Because it's only the Rabbanon, and so we'll be lenient during this time of twilight, when it's a question whether it's us or in the first place. Okay.
So this is one opinion, though. It's not that it's called like that. It's called like that.
How does it come out? So let's take a look. Let's read the rest of this Mishnah Berurah. says, these two opinions were predate these two great rabbis, and you can find both opinions in the Meiri. Okay, the Meiri was Rav Menachem Meiri from southern France, from the Provence area. He was a Rishon. Wasn't the most well-known Rishon because his manuscripts were not well published until I believe the 20th century, when there was somebody stumbled upon them or something like that.
They're in the Vatican.
And what was that?
Were they in the Vatican?
No, they weren't in the Vatican, but they hadn't gotten out so much. People knew of the Meiri, but if you buy a set of the Meiri today, it's because there was someone who came along and they, basically published his.
The Parma Library.
That's where they were.
I think so.
There you go. So and now you can open up the Meiri. Anybody could open up the Meiri. So Ayin Sham Shekosef. So take a look over where there in the Meiri. He writes the Ladei Hamateres according to the permissive opinion. Yeah, Ari Hagamar the Oser le'arev dafka b'dvar rishus. When the Gemara says you're not allowed to establish an eruv tchumen, it's only when it's a dvar rishus. When it's like I want to be able to walk over to my friend's house who lives extra far away. That's a dvar rishus. No one says you have to go spend Shabbos with your friend or go say hello to them. That's a dvar rishus. U'ma'arev b'raglav. And you also did this with your feet, meaning you went there, established it not with food but with your legs. Like you went there on Friday during this time period. You said, "Now this is where I am. I'm establishing my quarters here." The ba'alma motor afilu dvar rishus, because if it's the ba'alma, because in reality it's permitted even for a dvar rishus.
So that excludes l'shem mitzvah.
Hold on, yeah, 1 second. No, that would include that. The bepas, because if you use bread, okay, so if you go and you actually establish your quarters with like my physical, I didn't just put food there, but I'm staying here tonight. Like, I'm bein hashmashos, I'm a raglav. I went there. Maybe I go back later on to but I actually went there. Then even for a dvar rishus, we allow you to extend, so you want to go visit that friend on Shabbos, no problem, who's living far, far away. No problem, because if I establish my erev tchum with bread, with food, the rule is, if you go to Taf Tesvav, you can see it there, which is that even if I do it on Friday, forget bein hashmashos, I'm only allowed to use food if I'm doing that for a dvar mitzvah, to extend my ability to walk in a certain direction. Okay, but if it's for a dvar rishus, using the bread, not so simple. The laws that they roof
walking.
Yes, if I actually physically sort of go there myself, I say, how do I get the bread there? I think that the idea is that you may have food items already there or something like that. I'm not an expert. I don't know if those who studied Eruv Tchumen more recently, Steve Keller. I don't know if you recall this halacha. I could just pull it up very quickly here on my phone. I'm just double check it. Hold on. Halacha, Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim. What's Taf Tezva? That's 415. Take a look over here. 415. Okay. Sif Kotar Aleph. Okay, over there. Eid Ma'arvin Eruve Tchumen El Devar Mitzvah. You're not allowed to do an Eruv Tchumen except for Devar Mitzvah. Kegon Shahya wrote to Leilech Labais Avel. You want a friend feeling awful over Shabbos. They just lost a loved one. So you want to go spend time with them on Shabbos. Oh, Lebeis Hamishte, Shel Nisuin, or is there Sheva Brachos? That's a Dvar Mitzvah. Oh, Lahaka Pnei Rabba, O Chaveru, Shabal Veraderech, Kayotza Vayel. Okay. Wow, fascinating. Or she wrote to Leilech Tayel B'Yom Tov or B'Shabbos B'Pardes Sheyesh Bo Simcha. You want to go to an orchard and walk? It's beautiful. So actually, that's a Dvar Mitzvah. Why? Because it's Bazet Mikri Dvar Mitzvah to enjoy your Shabbos or your Yom Tov. I never saw the Torah now. Oh, okay, fine. Or you're running away because you're scared from bandits or whatnot. Okay, that otherwise, it's. But if you do it, by the way, it does count. But you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to do it except for an eruv for a dvar mitzvah. Sif Beis says ein ma'arvin eruv etchomen ben hashmashos v'im eruv eruv. Okay, which we'll make reference to in a moment. But if you do it during Bein Hashmashos, it does count after the fact. Bottom line is here that you see that with a Eruv Tchumen, it's really supposed to be done for his bar mitzvah. But if you do it, if you establish it, the raglav, like again, you, I guess the idea here being that you physically went, maybe you established not that you put food, but you made it a place of, this is your place where
How else you do it?
Yeah, so you could say that there are, you could either have a shaliach put it there for you, or you could have the food is already there, you are aware of it being there. It's a good question. I don't know. I have to go back to these complex laws which I learned one time in speech.
Everything is bar mitzvah. If I just do it because I eat for enjoying Shabbat.
Right, that's why it's from the Ramah. The Ramah said that. I was like, well, that's very interesting. That's a very expansive definition of Dvar Mitzvah, because there's a particular orchard that I like to walk in. That's beautiful.
I do a Shabbat at peace, basically. It's a bit Bar Mitzvah.
I hear. Yeah, no, there's a lot more to study in this topic for sure. The bottom line is, if I do this during the Bein Hashmashos, take a look at Sifkat on Ches, and then Simeon, I know you're about to say something. I'll get to you in a moment. Rod Selomar. As I just read to you over there in the Shulchan Aruch, if you go ahead and establish the Erev during Bein Hashmashos, even if you weren't supposed to, it does count, and now you are technically allowed to use it that Shabbos. Simeon, go ahead.
When you read off your phone a moment ago, if I heard correctly, you threw Yom Tov into the mix for the establishment of an Eruv.
That if you're, because here, Eruvei Tchumen do affect life on Yom Tov, unlike an Eruv Chatzeros. For the most part, we don't worry about Eruv Chatzeros on Yom Tov. Even if you lived in a community without an Eruv, you could still carry things, though they would need to be for the purposes of Yom Tov, which most people are carrying things usually for the usage of that day, but I don't know. Sometimes I have extra stuff in the bottom of my stroller, so I don't know if it's not relevant to the day. But yes, that's why Yom Tov it has relevancy in this discussion. Tchum does matter on Yom Tov. Okay. Very good. Let's go back up on top of the Shulchan Aruch. Here's what I can do during Bein Hashmashos. I am allowed to do Maser on Demai. What is Demai? So take a look at Sifkat on Test. Es Hadmai. Well, it's a whole Maseches in Shas called Demai. It's in Zroim. There's no Bavli on it. There's a Gemara Talmud Yerushalmi. What does Demai mean? It's when I have produce that belongs to an Am Haaretz. An Am Haaretz is someone who is not necessarily cautious and careful about halacha in every way, shape, and form. And so here we write, the rov ame haaretz ma'asrihin. Al pi rov, most even not so knowledgeable farmers do tithe their produce. But enough of them don't that we have sometimes a little bit of a doubt. But al pi rov, based on the rule of majority, we can assume that the piece of fruit, the grain that's in front of me, has been tithed, but that's by Torah law. The rabbis came along and said, because there is some element of doubt here, you must tithe it again, or you must tithe it because we don't know if it was properly tithed. And therefore, that's Demai. It's a rabbinic law. So during Bein Hashmashos, when rabbinically the rabbis say I have to tithe it because by the Torah law I can rely on the rule of Rov and go ahead and utilize this produce, so I am allowed to fix the grains, tithe them during this time, below mikre tikun. It's not called fixing. Why? Because the whole institution of Demai is a stringency on Torah law. Okay, therefore it's not like fixing because it's questionable whether I do this. It was already fixed. This is a extra stringency. Okay, that is Demai. I don't know if any of us come into contact with Demai. I feel like even in Eretz Yisrael today, even if you got produce from a farmer that was not religious, my gut tells me you go to, unless you get it directly from the farm. But probably then you could just know they didn't tithe it at all, right?
Tying,
Tithing, I mean master.
taking mass.
Yeah, master, truma v'mas, trumo to masrot. So that's it's a fancy English word. That is probably less of an issue today. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't live in Eretz Yisrael.
So if it's not equal.
Yeah.
you do it.
I don't think so. I don't think so because taking demai, that's an interesting question. I have a feeling that the answer is no.
Yeah.
I think that the answer is no. You can't because the here that idea is that you're cobbling a derabanan on a derabanan on a derabanan. The whole idea of taking the tithing in general is derabanan, and this whole pile is midrabanan needs tithing, not midoraisa needs tithing. And furthermore, the timing of the day, the rabbis is a suffix whether it's prohibited or not. So you've coupled a number of things together. The rabbis are like, it's fine, go ahead. But I think once it's Shabbos, the answer is no. Back on our list on top, you can do hatmana on hot foods. Sivkat on yud, betomnin, bedavar she'eno mosef hevel. Now everyone knows what this means here in this year, right? In a substance that does not increase heat. We know Kamosh Kasu Siman Betchila Siman Reish Nun Zayin, which we learned recently. Ayin Sham Shamavar Kol Prate Hadin Nutameh, and there we talk about all the details with the reasoning behind it. That basically you're not allowed to insulate completely insulate foods during that time if it's a davar hamosif hevel. So that's any kind of heat source. But if it's a pillow, a blanket, a sheet, a shirt, you're allowed to insulate your foods during that time to keep it warm. And now we get the general rule. For other things that are prohibited midrabanan, chutz mi'elu, aside from these ones, we're sometimes a little more strict. The kachashipo that were mentioned here. Din bein hashmashos kamo Shabbos atzma. Bein hashmashos equals Shabbos. Imlo, but there comes a very important exception, which was basically what the exceptions in these cases too, by the way. Imlo shehulid var mitzvah o sha'ar dochak. I mentioned to you before, you're caught during bein hashmashos, you're not home yet. What do? Or you see you're going to be caught, get in a cab, make sure the driver's not Jewish. And you could probably ascertain sometimes based on the name, right? And you could probably al-pi-rov assume that they're not Jewish unless they have, it's like, a Rothstein or something like that, their last name, Get in the cab, let them drive you the rest of the way. Okay?
And when you get in the cab, though.
Yeah, set it up on Uber. It's an automatic payment. Yeah, you can even set up the tip beforehand and everything. Yes, with Uber, it's a lot easier now. That way, what's happening is only the Rabbanon, because the non-Jew is doing it, and I would say that's probably an example of docha, not so simple situation. You're not home on Shabbos. That comes with a lot of complications. It's Dvar Mitzvah also. One can do something that is a Rabbanon during Bein Hashmashos. Okay, v'kamevor l'kaman. This Siman Shin Mem Beis. We could talk about this more when we get the Shin Mem Beis. Ayin Sham Shin Mem Beis. This is the third to last halacha or Siman in Hilchot Shabbos. So it'll be a while till we get there. Okay. Take a look at the second line up above. Arvin. What else can we do during this time? Arvin eruve chatzeros. You're allowed to make an eruv chatzeros during this time period. How do you make an eruv chatzeros? Take a look, Yud Aleph. Arvin, yochol gam ken levarach, and you make the bracha too. When we make a bracha, we make eruv chatzeros. If you've ever been here on eruv Pesach, you'll know that I do this, which is when you establish the shared foods between the people. You have to have a wall or structures that enclose a city, whether it's door frames, that are created by, we use a lot of utility poles. The wires that go this way and then down the utility pole. So there's a lot of door frames around. There's also fences. There's also other things that combine to enclose our community. But that's not in and of itself enough to create a situation where you can carry. You must also, the rabbis established the rule that you must establish a joint communal food that needs to be stored in someone's home. So that's why on Erev Pesach, we renew this every year. Someone will hand me a box, or I'll hand somebody a box of matzah, and they'll lift it up, and they're acquiring it on behalf of everybody else in the community who lives here now, who will live here in the coming year. And this establishes joint, shared food. And now, I need to walk to your house. So this establishes the reason sort of for walking, which is that an Eruv, the word Arev means literally to mix, that we can all mix with each other. So by sharing food, it actually creates the Eruv. It's a very cool concept. I once gave a drasha on it. There's a medrash that mentions that Abraham was teaching the laws of Eruv Chatzeros, or something like that at some point. And it's a very fascinating medrash because obviously Abraham didn't have Eruv Chatzeros, but the idea is that the whole idea of Eruv is that is that the rabbis wanted there to be a sense of community, that there's a sense of sharing together in the experience of Shabbos by literally having shared food together. So we keep our shared food in the shul here in the office. Anyone is welcome, by the way, anyone is welcome to come and take it. That is one of the conditions of this, and that you can use it and eat it on Shabbos. The following Shabbos, though, you need to let me know beforehand because I need to reestablish the Eruv, otherwise it's a problem. So you make a bracha. You can even make a bracha, and then so when we do, we make a bracha. And then al mitzvahs Eruv. So you're allowed to make the bracha even when you do it during Beit Hashmashos. That's what we're talking about here. This setting up of the shared food situation. Because the other kind of Eruv, I'm very clear here. If you need to repair the physical structure of the Eruv, that is probably d'oraisa. That is probably many d'oraisas. That's probably bona. That's probably tikkun. Whatever. It's either bona or tikkun. You're definitely fixing something. You're probably going to tie a knot at some point. That's a kesher, shajal kalyama, whatever it might be. That probably is a d'oraisa. Here we're talking about the d'rabbanan of the shared food. It says up above, "Ayin the kaman simin shin tzadi gimel." So take a look at Yud Beis here. Oh, sorry, I didn't finish that last phrase on Yud Aleph. Nevertheless, a priori, zahar shel yacher ha'eruv chatzeros ad ben hashmashos. But you really shouldn't delay this until ben hashmashos. The only reason doing this is that it was accidental. I forgot, or my kid ate the eruv chatzeros, for early dinner, and now I have to reestablish it. So otherwise, you really shouldn't be waiting until the last minute. That's just bad advice in general in life to wait till the last minute and everything. Simin shin tzadi gimel yud beis sivkat yud beis hainush de shitufei mavos yesh lo dinei ruve chatzeros. The being able to share alleyways has the same halachic set as in eruv chatzeros. That's a whole topic we'll get to when we get there. Shitufei mavos is another way of saying eruv chatzeros. It's the same idea. It's just eruv chatzeros literally means a courtyard. So technically, what we do here is probably not an eruv chatzeros. I have to guess. Right? It's eruv chatzeros when you share a courtyard, and everybody in the courtyard. There used to be houses in the courtyard, and everyone that way could use the yard. Shitufei mavos is that you share the alleyways. That's because a chatzer opens up to an alleyway, the way that the Gemara describes it. So how do I share the alleyways? Well, this chatzer has to share food with this chatzer, right? So now we're establishing the shitufei mavos, the partnership. Shituf means the partnership of the alleyways, and that's probably what more accurately describes what's happening in our neck of the woods here, is that we're all sharing the streets and whatnot. By the way, there is one more other thing that you have to do. It's not mentioned here, but you do have to acquire the rights to the streets. So we did a schiras v'shus here. We bought the rights to halachic purposes. For halachic purposes, we bought the rights to all the streets in Scarsdale, New Rochelle, Eastchester. Actually, maybe we did it with all of Westchester, by the way, because we did it with the Westchester County Executive. Paid him a few dollars. Don't worry, it was not a bribe. It was official, whatever. It's a real thing. And he gave us the rights and authority for. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right, exactly. It's not a bad idea. We'll take that angle in court. Hey, you got to put a light up over there. We own this place. Okay. So there are Od Prate Dinim Ayin Sham. There are more laws about how to set up an Eruv. Very complex. We'll get there when we get there.
From a
Yes.
technical point of view,
Yeah.
what all the streets in Westchester.
Yeah.
But for example, Weaver Street, it's a state road, not a county road.
I think it is.
It's a state, state.
It's a 125, but the reality is that who's responsible, let's say, to push the snow away when there's snow? By the way, the answer is not so simple. Half the street is Scarsdale, and half the street is New Rochelle.
Yeah.
So it's shared, but I think the idea being that that if there are things that come up on those streets, the local cities and municipalities are responsible to take care of them. And you just need to have somebody who has authority. By the way, you don't have to even necessarily go to the Westchester County Executive. I remember when Herschel Shechter was giving a shiurim on this topic. I actually distinctly remember him talking about you can ask the police officer, or the chief of police. Police have the ability to they sort of patrol the roads. And he was even talking about, if I'm not mistaken, in Washington Heights, where he's talking about establishing an Erev Chatzeros in the building or something like that. So you could even ask the chief of police, because the police are allowed to go into the buildings whenever they would like, into the hallways and whatnot. So the reality is that the whole thing is in the Rabbanon, and the county executive has some authority for sure over it, even though you're right, it's a state route. And there's also other, I'm sure other state routes that go through Westchester County as well. So it's an interesting question, but I think that it's sufficient for the purpose of this halacha of having rights to the streets. Okay, what time is it? 8:21. Let's do one more piece and then we'll stop after that. You're permitted to tell a non-Jew bein hashmashos lahadlik ner letzorach Shabbos. You are allowed to tell a remember, you can't light the candle yourself, but you are allowed to, during this period, tell a non-Jew to light the candles for the purposes of Shabbos. Again, they didn't have quite the lights that we have today. They needed candles in order to be able to see in the house. And you're allowed to tell the non-Jew, any malacha they need to do, if it's for a tzorech mitzvah, or you became, tarud means you became busy, and you were grabbed in a certain way, and now some things didn't get done that are needed to get done for Shabbos. So now you need to turn to your non-Jewish neighbor, friend, whatever, to help you out. So you are permitted under those circumstances.
I've heard that.
Let's take a look here.
Really can tell a non-Jew to do something.
Bein hashmashmos.
Right.
Yes, if it's a devar mitzvah. So you take a look at the Mishnah Berurah here. He'll actually enlighten us what benech pazaleha means, because that's a vague term. It's going to sort of bother you, So it's what I mean. A lot of things bother me on Shabbos that I wish I could have someone do for me. So what does this mean? So Yud Gimel, Lomar le'eno Yehudi. You can say to a non-Jew, Amir le'eno Yehudi, hu bichlal shvus. It's a derabbanan. Shvus, something you shouldn't do, meaning midrabbanan. Okay, but logazral shvus ben hashmashos. There's no decree on a shvus during twilight. Litzorech mitzvah. The rabbis never set it up that you can't do this if there's a tzorech mitzvah. Okay. We'll see when we get to Shimon Beis this topic further. Bein hashmashos Daled. HaMechaber Ozel leShitasa. The Mechaber is following according to his own opinion. The Sirle lekaman the Simin Shin Zayin. If hey, the B'Shabbos Gufa Aser Al Yedei Ena Yehudi B'Malacha De Oraisa. Afilu Hu Yimhu LeTzorech Shabbos. When it's Shabbos itself is prohibited to do anything through the hands of a non-Jew. B'Malacha De Oraisa, when there's a De Oraisa Malacha. During Ben Hashmashos, we're saying that you are allowed to do that. And that's on Shabbos, even if it's the Tzorach Shabbos. Like once it's Shabbos, once it's past Ben Hashmashos, no, forget it. During Ben Hashmashos, you have some wiggle room. Tezvav, L'Tzorach Mitzvah, Av she'einena b'shvil Shabbos. Even if this mitzvah, by the way, to extend it further, Hinda, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Even if it's the mitzvah here is not a Shabbos mitzvah, not related to Shabbos, not b'shvil Shabbos. Some other mitzvah purpose, but not even related to Shabbos. I am allowed to ask them to do it bein hashmashos. Again, the Simon Shim and Beis, these laws that talk about much more in depth. Ayin Sham Mishnah Berurah. Tez Zayin, this is the most interesting point of this whole thing. Yeah, but how do they translate nechpaz, by the way, over there, Tommy?
Desperate.
They're desperate. What was that? What did you say?
One feels desperate.
Yeah.
That's how they
Desperate.
Yeah, they're just like
Anxious,
Yeah, they're like
anxiety.
yeah. This is not a there's not exactly. They're desperate. They're anxious about something over Shabbos.
It's like anxiety.
Kasav Rashal. So Marshal says the following: Hainu. This is fascinating. I hear you. I give you lots of chumras around here. I'm gonna give you a cool today. Ready? Kol davar she'im lo yanasehu mitzta'er b'Shabbos. If it doesn't get done, you're gonna be mitzta'er over Shabbos. You're gonna be like upset over Shabbos. Shari lasas al yedei eno Yehudi ben hashmashos. You can ask the non-Jew ben hashmashos to do this, because otherwise the whole Shabbos you're gonna be there. It's gonna be like you're gonna be on shtilkas for whatever reason. So you're allowed to ask the ben hashmashos, the non-Jew, to take care of that. That's what the Rashal says. Marshal says. Now, what does the Mishnah Berurah say though? The Mishnah Berurah is like, my heart is telling me that you should be machmir. Im ein lo bahem shum tzorach b'Shabbos rach l'tzorcho. He says, look, fine, rely on that, but it has to have some Shabbos purpose. It's bein hashmashos, and this you're left on this annoying.
You have to turn your computer off, and it's going to ping all
The whole ping, the whole Shabbos, and it's going to ruin Shabbos. It's a tzorach Shabbos, like it's taking away from my Shabbos. It's one thing if it's like bein hashmashos. I should have sold that. I should have sold that share. and you're and now you're like, you go over to your non-Jewish neighbor who has your information to your Charles Schwab account, and you're like, I need you to sell it. That's not tzorach Shabbos. So then maybe leave it. And he says here, I use that example on purpose. Unless there's a great loss, a financial loss, or there's some great unusual need. So sharei shvutim bein hashmashos. Then fine. Okay, we'll allow the derab, but he said, we'll allow derabbanans during bein hashmashos. Ubeprat shvus damir la'eno Yehudi les be'maseh. Specifically, I'll allow you to do a derabbanan like amir la'nochi, where there's no action. It's dibur. I tell the non-Jew what to do. Alkein mutar lomar la'eno Yehudi bein hashmashos lahadlik near yard site. Let's say you have a yard site over Shabbos and you forgot to light the yard site candle before you lit the Shabbos candles. So, I don't mean I'm not turning off the recorder. I'm saying this: a yard site candle is not a real halacha. That's very hard for people sometimes to grasp. I light a yard site candle with my dad's yard site. I'm not saying I don't do it, but it's not a full-fledged on a yard site. You have to light it. It's a ner nishmas. It's a Nishmas Adam is Dome Lener. There's a pasuk, forgetting it right now. It's a nice minhag. For people who don't light a yard site candle, I'm aware that it's sort of like a Yahari Val Yab. If you forget to light a yard site candle, some people it's really like. Sometimes people ask me Shilas about that. The yard site candle, this. If I forgot to light it, can I light it? Sure, like no problem. If it means something to you, yes, go ahead and do it. But on Shabbos, it's actually very problematic if you forgot to light it. So, but if it's going to really be, someone's going to be, because it's here, by the way, it's not a new thing. People treat lighting a yard site candle like a tzorach gadol. The way they feel. It's not a tzorach gadol from a halachic perspective, but the way they feel, it's a big deal. So he says, light it. So ask your non-Jewish friend to light the yard site candle bein hashmashos. You forgot, now it's Shabbos. I just lit the candles. I accepted Shabbos. Go over to your neighbor who you're close with. Say, can you come over and light this candle for me? It's in memory of my father, my mother, whatever it is that you're lighting the candle for. It's fine. That's a tzorach gadol. By the way, and I appreciate here the sensitivity that's in this moment here of that sometimes a tzorach gadol is not a halachic tzorach gadol. It's how you feel. Tzorach can be a tzorach gadol too, right? And this is for a lot of people. Again, this is my rabbinic experience also in my 8 years of being in the rabbinate, that yahrzeit candles are a big deal for people. So, anyways, ad kan
Remember,
v'shalom
Rob,
b'kitzur.
he used the word mitzta'er in the previous, in Tesvav, or
Yeah,
Tes.
yes, and I think in Tezline at the beginning he says mitzta'er, but then even according he says, but I'm not so I don't want to be makil for everything. It has to be letzorach gadol. So halachic tzorach gadol wouldn't be lighting a yahrzeit candle, but it's a emotional tzorach gadol for people. And so I think even according to the more machmir opinion, I think he is more that Mishnah Berurah is permissive here. Light the yahrzeit candle. Let the person light the yahrzeit candle. Don't take that emotional experience away from them, because for them it's a big deal. Even though halachically it doesn't have any significance or meaning. Okay, we'll stop here. I think this is a good place to stop. Hopefully, but we got the basic rule down here. It's a very important rule. Bein hashmashos. If there is a tzorech mitzvah or a tzorech gadol, you might have to on your own kind of define what's a tzorech gadol for your family. You are allowed to go knock on the neighbor's door who's not Jewish and say, "Can you, hopefully you've established a relationship with them so that it's not the most odd thing in the world." And that you explain to them what this is about. But if you need to during that time period, that's the time period to do it. Okay, that's the time period. If you remember really quickly that there was something you forgot, you have the ability to go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. Very good.
Giving away the future.